There was this old barn tucked away in the woods behind my house that always caught my interest. It had seen better days, with paint peeling off like bad wallpaper, and the wood looking so rotten you wondered how it was still standing. People in town would often whisper about it being haunted, but I never really bought into those spooky stories. My friends and I would joke about it when we hung out, and after a while I got curious enough to go check it out for myself. I remember it was a damp Friday morning when I finally decided to see the barn in person. The remnants of a thunderstorm from the night before made everything feel soggy as I walked down the narrow dirt path. The barn door wasn't locked, but it was covered in thickets of brambles and vines, making it hard to get in. So instead of trying to pry open the door, I wandered around until I found a little opening that was about eye level. It looked like someone had tried to tear the barn down at some point, but honestly, they didn't seem to get very far. I shoved my hand through the gap, pulled off a piece of wood, and kicked and yanked until there was enough space for me to sneak in. Once I was inside, I couldn't believe how well preserved it was, despite likely being there for over 100 years. Old horse-drawn tools rested on the dirt floor, and in the back sat a rusty old tractor, just chilling there as if the years hadn't touched it. There were stacks of hay bales, almost like a staircase leading up. Some of the hay still shone golden, untouched by the elements. It was pretty cool, so I ended up bringing all my friends over the next week, and we couldn't stop talking about it. Then one Thursday, my friend Max caught up with me during our break. He looked at me and said, "Mark, that barn's been around for more than a century. Have you ever thought it could actually be haunted?" I rolled my eyes and told him, "It's not haunted." "But what if you're wrong?" Max challenged me, looking a little serious about it. I snapped back, "It's not haunted. Come on, Max, it's just a barn." His expression said he wasn't convinced, and he walked off, but he got me thinking about it. That evening, I decided to ask some of the older folks in town. According to them, if you sat in the barn at midnight, you could hear all sorts of things happening inside. Intrigued, I grabbed a backpack and made my way back to the barn around 11:30 that night. Once I was in there, I made a little fire for light and warmth and settled in to wait. Around midnight, I dozed off only to be jolted awake by the sounds of laughter and footsteps. I looked around, half expecting someone to come through the door, but it stayed shut. Instead, I could hear movement up in the hay. I figured I'd just stay quiet and see what I could catch, but all I could hear were faint giggles and whispers that seemed to float through the air. I sat there for almost half an hour, when suddenly I heard something else. It sounded like a gun being chambered. Then I heard a young man's voice pleading, "No, no, 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 no." A girl's voice cried out, "Daddy, no!" Out of nowhere, there was a gunshot, and I flinched, covering my head with my hands. I heard a strange squeal and another shot. There was a scuffle, then a loud bang, like something massive had fallen. The last thing I heard was the sound of someone running away, panicked and desperate. My heart raced as I tried to wrap my head around what just happened before I ended up dozing off again, pretty shaken. When I woke next, I could hear a crowd, and they were furious. The noise kept getting louder, and I was on edge trying to make out what they were saying. The voice I thought belonged to the father was screaming at them, calling them names and blaming the boy for whatever had gone down. The commotion grew until I heard the father yelling, "Get your hands off me!" Then, with a chilling silence, his voice stopped. There was this awful pounding against the barn wall, and then everything went quiet except for the occasional faint sound that faded into nothing. I crept toward the door and opened it just enough to peek outside. There was stillness, broken only by the sounds of crickets and an owl hooting somewhere nearby. I noticed something on the ground and picked it up. It was a tattered leather piece of what looked like a vest. Just as I stood up, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. I turned and saw, hanging at the end of an old, decaying rope, a single noose that was tied with surprising precision. My stomach dropped, and I had no idea what to make of it.